Well, I'm so happy to have Betty Dely Broadnax with us today. Betty, you graduated in 2008. You're a member of the women's basketball team. Coach here remembers you being a fun player to coach with a great attitude. And definitely you were a leader while you were on campus, which is a strong reason why you're here talking to us today. So just thrilled to have you with us. You're also a member of the Student Athlete Advisory Council. And did you go to a national leadership conference?
I did, yep, the NCAA Leadership Conference in Orlando. So that was the summer of my freshman year.
Wow, brave. But that's great. And I remember that you had some great programs that you wanted to do when you came back. So we can get into all that. But why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where you work, live, and your family, if you want to talk about that.
Sure, yeah. So as you just said, I graduated in '08 from Westfield. I'm originally from Waltham, Mass. I moved down to Northern Virginia around 2012 to attend grad school. So I got my master's in counseling development at George Mason. But before moving down to Northern Virginia, I started as a school counselor / shift supervisor at a residential treatment center in Arlington, Massachusetts. So that was my first job out of Westfield. I got a psychology degree at Westfield. So going into a residential treatment center was using that degree right away. Working there for about 4 years. I loved working with teenagers. I loved working in the school setting. I wanted to transition to a public school setting, which would require me to get my master's. So that's what prompted the move down to Virginia. So I've been here ever since, minus a year that my husband and I moved to California for his military, and then we moved back here. This is probably the staying place we'll be for several years. So it is me, my husband, and my son Caius, who is 1.5.
Wow, that's great, Betty. Just congratulations on everything you've done so far. Let's go way back and let's talk about why you chose Westfield.
Yeah. So growing up, so myself and I have 3 other siblings. So we are all first generation Americans here in the country. Our parents immigrated from Haiti. And then so we're all also first generation college bound and college graduate students. So planning for college, it was a lot different than what I saw my friends doing. It was kind of all new to me, trying to figure out all about school and where to go and everything. So I really was focused on the state schools in Massachusetts, just looking at location and money and funding college. So I really looked at all the different state schools that I could apply to. Basketball was obviously important to me too. It wasn't the thing that I was looking at, but it was just kind of something that I did that I was just naturally good at. So I just wanted to see if I could play basketball as well. Got connected with the coach at the time during my senior year in high school. Looked at a couple of different state schools. I liked Westfield. I liked the campus. To be honest, I like the distance it was from my family. It wasn't too close, but it wasn't too far, still in Massachusetts where I can kind of get that independence, but still be able to get home within, that same day if I needed to. And then looking at psychology, wanted to major in that. One thing that I actually really liked was that I knew that Westfield would have a new athletic facility. So that was new coming in my freshman year. So going to visit, that was great to see. And it was actually my coach that brought me on a visit, my high school basketball coach that brought me on a visit to Westfield because her nephew was also a senior at the time. So we all went together and getting to see that new facility that was going to be built was awesome. And yeah, I made the decision to go to Westfield because it kind of checked a couple boxes.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you became an owl. And that's a nice story. What do you remember about the transition from, going to high school in Eastern Mass to being at Westfield State here in Western Mass?
So obviously going to college, it's that first opportunity in time where I was just out of the house. Growing up, I was very church focused, very school focused and home focused, because that was like where I spent the majority of my time. So going to college, it was completely different as, okay, I have all this time is my own. So what am I going to do with that time? So the transition, even though I had that more freedom and time, I think the transition for me was actually really, it was good because I think I learned a lot growing up in terms of my morals, my foundation, my faith was just, I was very rooted in that. So going into the college setting where you do have all this opportunity to do whatever it is that you want to do, I think just the level head that I had helped me to go, attend class when I needed to, get the grades that I need to, well balanced in basketball, and then a social life, of course, being able to connect with people. I did enjoy Westfield, just having a close team right away. So having that support system right away. That's a great thing about playing a sport is that you go in, you meet these people and they automatically become your friends because you're spending so much time together. So that was really great in helping me just transition in terms of the social aspect of it all and making those connections and friendships.
That's great, Betty. And we do remember you being a tough athlete with great character. And I think some of the family values and morals that you talked about definitely shined through and still do. So tell us about, you mentioned the friendships that you made. What experiences impacted you, even now? What experiences that you had, while you're here at Westfield?
Well, with the friendships, I think Westfield, we know like there is, in terms of the demographics of Westfield, the population of Black students, that was actually a culture shock in seeing the different population in school. I knew kind of what the demographic was going into the school. It wasn't like a shock in that sense, but just in being there and knowing, okay, I grew up in a Haitian family, always around Haitian folks in church and my family and my parents' friends. It was always just the Haitian culture. And then going into Westfield, I always tell my husband this and my friends this, like, putting ranch on pizza. Like that was a thing that people did. And I was like, oh, that's like a thing that people do. And that's something that for me was a culture shock. But like the friendships that I formed, whether they were my friends that were from similar culture from me or same race background, those connections have always stuck with me. Like my best friend, two of my best friends in high school or in college, one was on the track team, so he was a white male, and then one was actually my RA, and he was Black male. And it was just so interesting going through college and just seeing the different perspective of how they approach different things. My friend that was Black, he was very social justice oriented, very, want to make sure that everything is equitable and fair. But my white friend was also on that same line. He actually, right now, that's kind of what he teaches in school. But it was just so interesting to see the difference just because one was white and one was Black, and just those different conversations. Because I thoroughly enjoy having conversations about race, having conversations about social justice. So they were my closest friends, and just having made that connection in college and then still being very connected to them now. That's just something that I cherish a lot for my time at Westfield, and that I was able to connect with them.
That's great. I'm glad that you had that experience with them, because that is something to cherish in conversations like that. To have friends that you can have conversations, deep conversations like that are a great thing to have for sure in life. So some of your culture was different probably than your teammates, with your Haitian family and such. Do you remember also having the opportunity to share your culture with your teammates and for them to experience some things that were different than what they experienced?
I think it was more just in conversations, not necessarily like my Haitian culture, but just more so my race of being Black. I remember, I want to say freshman or sophomore year, one of my teammates was talking about something, and it was in reference to another friend or a peer or somebody, but that person was Black, and then in talking, they paused before they said that that person was Black, and kind of shifted and looked at me. And it became a conversation where I said, it's okay, you can say that they're Black, that's who they are. It's not that you're saying it in a derogatory way. It's not that you're saying anything offensive about them. That's a description of who they are. And it was interesting because you could tell for them it was kind of an experience that they had not had before, and they didn't know like the proper way to go about it. But they were willing to listen to me and talk to me about it, and talk about why that's okay, what's not okay. So I think I had more of those type of conversations than more so than sharing my Haitian culture with my teammates.
Well, that's something, and that's a case in point of why we want all of our students to have, experiences that are more diverse than what they were used to. In any way, it's great to learn from each other and learn how to become comfortable talking about things. So it sounds like you were a good teammate. So do you have any advice for our current student athletes?
I think one of the biggest things just for any student athlete is going, especially freshman year, going into college, ready to be a student and an athlete. And I think, you hear that all the time, you're a student before you're an athlete, but it gets lost so easily in especially that freshman year when you're going into school, that you want to make those connections, the social life, and then also doing well in whatever sport that you're competing in, so that student piece sometimes gets lost. So being able to balance that, so finding the time to have that social life, enjoy the college experience, as it's said to be wonderful and fun and a growing time, but then also utilizing that time to really grow as a person. So what are your values? What do you stand for? You have all this independence now, so really taking the time to figure out who you are, but then also putting that work into your studies, so that when those 4 or 5 years are over, that you have something walking out the doors of Westfield.
Great. Do you remember one or two of your favorite classes that you had at Westfield?
I would say one was my African American literature class. It was one of my elective classes, and I really enjoyed it just because I like to read. I definitely read more than I used to, just with things that I have to do in life now. But I loved to read when I was in college. So that course, it was just so great in the literature that I was introduced to, either novels or short stories, and just being able to sit in class and kind of analyze them, and then given the opportunity to write about them as well. So that was a class that I really enjoyed. And then there was another class, I took a movement science class, which is obviously outside of the psychology major, but I took it, I believe, senior year, because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do after receiving my undergrad. So I knew I wanted to get a master's degree at some point, but I didn't know exactly at that time what I wanted to get my master's degree in. I thoroughly enjoyed psychology, and I thoroughly enjoyed sports. So I was trying to see, how do I combine the two possibly in the future, and possibly sports psych was something that I was looking into. So I wanted to take that movement science course to kind of get a foundation for it. I obviously ultimately didn't go into sports psych, but it was just an enjoyable class because I like athletics, I like sports. I did a couple years ago end up getting my personal training certification. So I did go that route, but it was just an enjoyable course because I got to combine what I liked.
Great. How much time did you take between grad school and when you left Westfield State?
I took 4 years. So within that time, I worked at that residential treatment center, and it was an all-girls residential treatment center. So it's a tough job. If anyone knows anything about residential treatment, the kids that are there for various mental health reasons, and they're teenagers, and they're girl teenagers. So a lot of different emotions and things going on there, but it's very rewarding to see them transition from there into whatever their next step is going to be. So I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm sure you were great. That's a tough field, so that's good that you did that for a while. Betty, what do you hope to still achieve? What are you striving for personally or professionally?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question because it's something that I think about often. So in the position that I am right now as a school counselor, so this is my 6th year as a counselor. Um, and I'm always looking for what's next. And it's funny because my director always says, well, you're here, like you're doing this. And I am, but I always want to see like what more can I do? So right now I'm the lead school counselor for my team. So we have a team of 9 counselors. So as the CT lead, it gives me that opportunity to kind of put those leadership skills into place and work with my team. So I'm trying to figure out kind of where I want to take that. I'm also interested on the side. Like I enjoy business. I enjoy, the aspects of starting a business. So my husband and I often talk about doing different business ventures. So he's in IT. So we often talk about like what that would look like. So I'm big picture as well as really good at details. So I'd like to dream big and think about big picture. And then he always has a lot of questions about what if, and that's where I get to also talk about, well, these are the details, and I enjoy doing that. So to answer the question, I'm striving for always growing. What that actually is, like the end goal, I can't say like it's this job or this title, but I definitely like to continue to grow in what my skills are and continue to develop them so that I'm using them to the best of my ability. Like I'm using them and not just allowing myself to settle or be comfortable. I never want to get to a point where I'm too comfortable, where there's just where it's just coasting every day. I think when I get to that point in whatever job I'm in, it's always, that's the time where I need to kind of look at, okay, where can you be challenged more? And I think that challenging, because for me, that challenging has what has brought me to a point where I can come more out of my shell. I can be, I can grow more, and I can just develop more in all aspects.
Very well said, Betty. That's great. And I'm not surprised that you're continually to strive for more. And I'm sure your supervisor and your boss think you're wonderful. And it's great to hear. It sounds like you and your husband have a nice partnership. So
yes.
I'm very happy for you. That's great. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Well, just for student athletes, just, continue to do what you love to do. Continue to focus on your sport, and knowing that, when you get out of college, that, there's obviously a life after college that may or may not involve your sport, but that doesn't mean that you can't take what you learned from that sport, whether it's the discipline, the friendships, the growing, the how to challenge yourself in those difficult moments, and just taking that with you in wherever you end up after college.
That's great advice. And I did want to just kind of circle back and ask you what do you remember about Coach Bertinian and how she might have impacted you as your basketball coach?
Yeah. So Coach Bertini was the coach for me for 3 years. So I had a different coach my freshman year. So she came in my sophomore year. It was very different from what my freshman year was like for the coach student athlete relationship, but in a good sense, in that, she really tried to make those bonds with our team and like making us feel that we can talk with her, and that the joking, and we would always joke about how she would wear a hat. So she would wear a hat on days that practices would be tough. And so I think she caught on to that, and then she started to almost joke and play with us and wear a hat some days, and we would have an easy practice. So we would question, like, is this hat thing a real thing or not? And that was just a funny thing that we always did. Our team, I remember our team always being a jokester team. So there was a lot of jokes, a lot of laughs. And she enjoyed that environment and, allowed us to have that environment, as long as we were, when it came time to being serious and getting on the court and putting in that work, as long as we were doing that, then, she was great at allowing that environment just to be fun and light and, just a good time.
Yeah, we like it when our team does well, so we get the benefit of her great personality, yes. Which keeps us laughing for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Betty. I think that was really great information for you to share with us. I appreciate it.